Welcome to the show. Today we're going to be talking about Descent, developed by Parallax Software and released in 1994. And I'm currently running the game in DXX Rebirth 0581, which is a port of the game over to modern operating systems, as the game is 20 years old. And if you play the original DOS version, it is a little bit harder to play on a modern system, and this port fixes it and lets it be a hardware rendered game instead of the original software only renderer, to allow it to be played on more computers at the time it was released. And I'm also running the game at 4K resolution because I have a decently powerful system, and this game is 20 years old. It does not take a whole lot to run this game. It didn't take a whole lot to run this game when it came out, and it was actually shareware when it came out. And just one other thing about this game series as a whole is this is Parallax Software's first game. It's also their only series under the label Parallax Software. Parallax Software, after Descent 2, was split into Outrage Entertainment and Volition. Outrage unfortunately closed, and Volition is still around. They've been bought out, I think, 2 or 3 times at this point. And they developed my favorite series of all time, Free Space, as well as Red Faction and Saints Row, so they've got a pretty good set of games under their belt in addition to this game. And this game still is regarded pretty well by people. It was very well regarded when it came out for being a unique and exciting experience, mainly for the way you move around. And you'll notice that it is, a fully 3D game, which at the time was unheard of. Even other 3D games still were bound by 2 planes. You couldn't jump, you couldn't even look up most cases. This game threw that away. It said, alright, we're going to do 360 degrees of freedom. We're going to let you look around wherever you want. We're going to let you move wherever you want. You can do it all. Now, when it came out, and still, I hope you guys aren't getting motion sick watching this video, but this game did cause motion sickness, and it still got praise. Just the note that a lot of reviews had was, be wary of this game, it causes motion sickness, because you're moving around in a frictionless 0G environment, still with reference points. Now, a lot of other space combat games, you don't get motion sick because you don't have a point of reference. There's no such thing as up anywhere in those games. This game, however, still appears to have that sense of up and down and left and right. So you're more likely to get motion sick watching this and playing this. Now, that's not the point of this video. The point of this video is to talk about the enemies. And before I do, just one other thing about this game that I think needs a mention is the level design. And you're going to see me open the map at least 2 or 3 times over the course of the video, and that if you catch it fast enough, you'll see just how crazy and strange these levels are. They're fully 3D. They were designed in a 3D environment, so there's up and down areas. You're going through tunnels that pop out crazy places that connect to other tunnels. And the level design does actually play into the enemies, because the enemies are usually placed in such a way where you can approach them from multiple directions, depending on how you go through the level. And that's something that a lot of older shooters have, is various ways to make it through a level. And that, unfortunately, is, I think, something games could use a bit more of at this point. But it also means you have to be more careful about your enemy placement as well as their overall design in the first place. And you'll probably have noticed at this point that the enemies aren't a whole lot, they don't physically respond that much to you shooting them. They'll pause, but they won't do anything really silly other than explode into fragments when you blow them up. And you might think, oh, well, I'm going to bash the game on that. And, I was on the fence about when I was making this video and recording it, what should I talk about? This doesn't fit into the whole theatrical idea I've been using in these other games, just because they aren't reacting a whole lot. They stop. They might even give you a fun little cry. And so, I can't fall back on it's like seeing a theatrical production of a play. I can't say that. I have to figure out something else as to why I think these enemies are well designed. And I can, however, fall back to relationship building with the player, because this game houses, in my opinion, some of the most diabolical and terrifying enemies in games. Now, their AI is not hugely sophisticated, but they're all very distinct. Each enemy is coded to do a slightly different thing. And I mean, they're not hugely unique in how they react to you. They all react in a vaguely similar way. Some of them are a bit more aggressive. They'll chase you a bit more than others. Some of them like to be closer. Some of them like to be farther away from you. But they all have very distinct visual design and even audio design. And I'm going to try and play as much audio from them as I can, because they do their little cries and they all make different sounds when they fire. And that actually is incredibly important when I talk about why I am afraid of some of these enemies, why they stick with me. Now, there's this one enemy, I don't remember the actual name of it in the game. The way I can describe it is a big gray and black and brown diamond with a Gatling gun on it and a green rectangle for an eye. And this enemy is, in my opinion, the scariest enemy in gaming, because it makes a lot of noise before it actually notices you, just to let you know it's there. And that was great design, because this thing can kill you absurdly fast if you don't pay attention to it. But they got around the whole difficulty of it sees you first, you get killed, and you have to deal with the live system or load a save or something, by making it one of the loudest and most vocal enemies in the game. And whenever you go into a room with one, even if you can't see it, it'll start making noise, and it makes a very distinct noise that lets you know it's there, so you can up your guard and up what you need to be looking for. And that's that's just good game design, because you don't want to make something wholly unfair that doesn't seem like there's any rational reason why it should be that unfair. And I mean, yeah, they kill you fast, but you can know they're there. You can get around it because of that audio. And that actually goes back to my point of why audio is so important. But so that's just one example. That's the enemy in this game that I'm the most scared of. A lot of the other enemies aren't quite as scary, but they all make the same. I mean, they don't make the same sound. They make their own individual sound for them noticing you or them getting hit. And they make a little screaming sound as they do that, even though they're just robots. But that lends a lot of personality to them. And that really does improve your relationship with them. Even if they're low polygon, like 3 or 4 colored robots, they still ooze that personality that you wouldn't necessarily expect from a game where there's no animation or there's only one animation per enemy. So that should give you an idea of why I think this game holds up well, why I can play it still and think it's one of the best games I've ever played from a overall design perspective. And it does just keep coming back to these enemies. You're building a relationship with them all the time, even if you don't notice it. Like, you can go into a room and there's 10 of the little one-hit kill orange guys who are incredibly easy, but when you see that there's 10 or 15 of them, you get a gut reaction to it. So that really does help just make the enemies feel alive, even though in reality they're not, and even in the game they're not alive, but they have personality. And that's something that is important. You need your enemies to have some kind of individualized personalities. And that gets lost, unfortunately, I think, in more modern games, because their resources aren't so restricted as to, we only have 9 or 10 polygons per enemy. How can we differentiate them? This game did a great job of that. They're differentiated. You can tell what they are from long distances even without seeing them. So that already starts building up their personalities with you, and therefore their relationship with you, the player. And that's something to really look for in a lot of these older games, is they're not animated well because they didn't have the resources to do it, or there wasn't the technology at the time, or they just didn't have enough money. But they could still make the enemies come across as something real. And as we wrap it up here, that's something to think about, is why do we form relationships with these characters and enemies in games, even if they don't react, even if they don't do things a person does? It's just that personality that they have, that they are programmed with, or that their models have. If they're individualized enough, and if they can give anybody some sort of reaction, the developers did their job. And that, I think, is what made me do a video on this game, is even though the enemies can't react physically as well as some of the other games I've discussed, you're still building a very important relationship with them. And you can notice it, like especially with my example of those diamond Gatling gun enemies in this game, terrify me. Whenever I hear that sound they make, I get incredibly nervous because I know I need to be on the lookout for them. And yeah, I mean, it's just, you need to be able to develop a relationship with the player when you're developing your enemies. And that's, I think, the gist of my argument with this game, is it did a great job with its enemies for that reason. And so I hope you enjoyed me escaping the mine, and catch you later.